Getting pumped up. WattsTV. Today is cloudy. It is Baby Megawatts part number 3, lessons learned from birthing class number 2. So I just did my video yesterday on what cameras we use. I dropped my Canon one and now the flash won't open. I'm gonna send it back so they can get it fixed. Now I gotta switch to a new camera today. It's gonna be fun. Today, I have a business meeting with one of my favorite business partners. Let's go find out who it is. Oh, hello, Kate.
I better be your favorite business partner, not one of them.
3. So yesterday, at the end of the day, I shared about how we went to our birthing class number 2, and it's based off a book called Birthing Within, is what the class is put together by. So now, yesterday, what I learned makes complete sense. How birthing within. So let me cover a couple things. Like yesterday we talked about how at the end of the day we drew those pictures where Kate and I drew ourselves or our birth setup as we wanted as mammals. If you haven't seen that video, I'm going to link it up here. But today, and I wanted to talk a little bit more specifically about this today because this was more of a sticking point. And really today all I did was sit in the room that is directly over here and worked basically from 7 a.m. 7:30 in the morning, and it's now 6:30 at night, and I'm still working. And Kate and I did a lot of strategy planning, planned out a lot of stuff today. It was really exciting. Okay, but let's talk about a little bit what I covered yesterday, because I think it's really, really stinking important. And this was some mind-blowing shit. Like it basically was. And it's stuff I've known before, but for some odd reason it really resonated at home today. And it's probably because it's the first type of class that I've taken about these topics, and they're not taught anywhere else that I know, at least that I've ever paid attention to. We're going to talk about oxytocin and adrenaline. All right, so oxytocin is something that a lot of people have heard of before, but not a lot familiar. I've heard of it, but I wasn't familiar with it. Basically what it means, what I like to call it, is the happy hormone. Okay? Because a lot of this is produced in the woman during birth. So this is what we are talking about. Adrenaline, we're talking flight or fight, right? It's like we get jacked up, something makes us mad, we want to go after them, you know, stuff like that, adrenaline. Or we're running, we're in a race, we got to be the next person, stuff like that, adrenaline, right? We all kind of know that. Happy hormone, most important, right? So there was 5 times she said where the oxytocin is through the roof excited. When we first fall in love, when we're having sex, during the process of the baby being born, and also when a mother is breastfeeding her child. And then there's a 5th one that I was not able to write down, and I don't remember, and neither does Kate. So there is a 5th one, I just don't know what that is at the moment. I could say when I got married, like that was very exciting for me and lots of oxytocin. But a way to increase this as well on a normal basis, when couples fight or get into arguments, one of them or both of them is lacking oxytocin, the happy hormone. Not very happy, and that's when stuff starts building up. If you've ever been in a situation where you just let stuff build up and then you're a frantic mess all the time, right? So you don't have any oxytocin that is generating. You're letting all this franticness, maybe adrenaline or some other stuff, or stress or cortisol is releasing in your body. So it's causing a lot more stress. But a way to increase oxytocin right now, or a way to create more in your body to increase it in your system, is you hug somebody for 30 seconds. And I'm not talking about one of these weenie little hug. You know how you've hugged people? I know you have, and you might be one of these people. Oh, let me give you a hug. Oh, yes, yes. Oh, little taps on the back, like, excuse me. Screw that. Like, get in there, give them a hug. Give them a real hug. Like, get some muscle into it. Bring the love in there. Bring it heart to heart, the heart to heart hug. Like, bring it there. Hold it there for 30 seconds. It might be super awkward. You might not like touching people, whatever. Get over yourself. And then the second thing would be, like, when you're giving someone a handshake. Now, this isn't in a way to increase the oxytocin right away, but it also increases happiness all the way around. Don't be giving one of these limp, this like, oh, hi, great to meet you. Oh, yes, it's great to meet you. Like, get in there. You don't have to like squeeze somebody's hands off, but like have a nice snug hug. Especially, I hate it. Drives me bonkers when women give me this limp stuff. Like, talk about, yeah, that's somebody I want to go out with. Oh, yes, let me hug you. No, okay? No. Women, listen up. You want a dude give them a real handshake. They'll be like, who's this? Because why? A stronger handshake increases the man's oxytocin right away. Single tip. Anyway, so now we're talking about oxytocin and adrenaline. And what this increases is during the pregnancy, during the birth, and how that increases throughout the women. And so what the example she gave is that if a woman's giving birth in a hospital, and so what she ends up doing is she's at home, okay, and then she gets in the car, and then she drives down the street, and then there's red lights, and then there's lots of other cars, and then there's traffic, and then she shows up at the hospital, all right, and then you're dealing with the woman at the hospital who you've never met, and then you might go meet a nurse who you've never met, and then as the woman's going through this process, and then you end up in your room where there's a bed, and and maybe a tub, depending on where your hospital is, that you're going to give birth. So you might have been, let's say you started going to the hospital when you had 5-minute contractions apart, so you now went from being completely like maybe in Zen at home, and then you go travel this, and as you're doing all of this process, your adrenaline levels increases, your oxytocin levels are decreasing. And I was like, wow, that's amazing stuff. So what happens when adrenaline levels are high and oxytocin is low? Labor's longer, it's more intense, it'll bother the woman more, it just creates a longer labor. So what happens is you want to get these back increased. So what she said is put a do not disturb sign on your door, give it 20 minutes with your partner, you guys really regroup, get back together, like reverse these, so get the A to decrease and O to increase, because going from your house to the hospital is a lot of stress, all right? So, and what that is, it increases the adrenaline. What we want to do is, she said, during birth, you want to bring the adrenaline as low as possible. So we made a list of things, like Kate made a list of things that bring her a lot of oxytocin and what decreases happiness. And we're going to be giving birth here at the house, and that's the plan. And so we will, I'll make sure the house is set up for that manner where this is really high and this is low. And so not only will you talk about oxytocin and how that correlates to our life and versus adrenaline, because what I want in my life, not just even though I'm not giving birth, but I want a lot more oxytocin. So what can I do to incorporate that? And this was super, super cool that I really learned, right? So this was the next part. It was the really cool part. Okay, this, I don't remember what it was called, but basically we have reptilian life, like if we were live life, we're a reptile, we want to eat and sleep and hide from protection, mostly what reptiles do. Mammalians is something like animals, right? Us, mammals. And then we have the neocortex layer. She called this something, but I don't remember what it was. So neocortex, this is what we're talking about when we talk about thoughts, right? This is that, as Seth Godin talks about the lizard brain, these are our thoughts. These are the things that are telling us you're not man enough, you're not woman enough, you can't accomplish it, you're not strong enough. Your mom's talking in your head about the fact that you didn't go to some grad school or you're not the man, yeah. So this comes up a lot during birth, right? She gave a lot of, we went through a number of examples where she went through the different stages of labor, early, active, and then in transition. And so going through all these processes, she gave all of these examples. And so what happened was, what I think was pretty mind-blowing stuff, she talked about from birthing within. So that's like really listening to ourselves. And mammals listen to themselves. Neocortex is in our head. So she said, like, make sure, and I talked about this, about sex and as giving birth in a previous video by our friend, gave us a recommendation. I'll link it up. And what happens though, oh wait, somebody's been talking about this for 40 years, but it finally really clicked with me what the hell she was talking about. Let's find out who that is. So this, Dr. Christiane Northrup, happens to be my mother-in-law, who has written a number of books, The Wisdom of Menopause, also Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom. I have the hardest time saying that title. And then Goddesses Never Age, right here. PBS special happening right now. Also been on New York Times list for a number of weeks and didn't buy her way in, like a number of people on the New York Times list too. Anyway, side note. So what she talks about is the mind-body connection, and that's what we started discovering on here. And what I started thinking about as we're in there, it's like we're so disconnected from our minds and bodies. And I see this every single day in business. I see this in life, how someone doesn't want to do something, but they keep telling themselves that they need to do it. And I know what Kate does really, really well, that I've learned a lot from her, is she listens to her intuition. So that means she's paying attention to her feelings and how That's supposed to be an H. How she feels. And hands down, that is the whole reason I'm standing on my porch, living in this house right now, because she wanted to move in November, and I'm like, we're not freaking moving. We don't need to move. We have our lease until May. There's no reason to move, like all of this stuff. And she got it in her head that we wanted to move. And literally, the reason we got this house is because the owner of this place took a picture from the street of just the water, and that's all we saw on Craigslist. And Kate goes, we're gonna live here. And then we came and looked at it and all this stuff. And the story around that I've already told before. But she was listening to her intuition because she was really, really listening to her feelings. And what she talked about is that women prolong birth, and it becomes a little bit more unenjoyable when we're listening to our thoughts and when they have to make decisions. So as I talked about in a previous video, is if Kate wants water, I just stick the water in front of her. I don't ask her questions so she doesn't get out of her body. And so what I started thinking about, because we're in the supplement industry, the vitamin industry, and then I started thinking about like our life as what we do in business. We have this massive industry called the drug and pharma industry, and the amount of drugs and pharmaceuticals that we are consuming in a society, especially the United States of America, because we're guinea pigs for the rest of the world anyway, once you study that stuff, is that we are promoted on a daily basis on massive amounts of advertising, because this is the biggest culprit that I can see dissecting us or separating us from our mind, from our body into our mind, is that they're telling us on whether it's a TV commercial or whether it's a newspaper or whether it's a magazine that you don't need to listen to yourself. You need this drug to solve your problem. You need this drug that is going to change your life. You need to be on this program or that program, right? So this industry is completely disconnecting us. And she talked about a lot of the use of drugs during pregnancy, and she said that a lot of times that it slows down and prolongs the pregnancy and makes labor longer, and also rises C-section rates, because the woman, once they have a drug, they're no longer attached to their body. They can no longer feel what's going on. And she went through a lot of description about the baby and where you can feel it and how it's coming out, and really listening to yourself and what it's going through, and the transition that takes place, because as a baby is being born, the woman is transitioning from being, and same with Kate and I, like it's the woman is transitioning and the partner is transitioning from the two of them to bringing this third person into the world. So it's almost like a ladder that you're climbing to get up into the top, let's say the top level, and you are going to generate something amazing at that top level. And what that top level is the baby. And what this process is of feeling inside of yourself as the baby's being born to get to this top level is the transition period that requires. Okay, like that was some mind-blowing stuff. I was like, whoa, baby. Now I fully understood what Kate's mom was talking about. Okay, now let's go. Hold on, I got one more. This is a little bit longer video, but this is a lot of cool information. Okay, so what she also talked about, which was crazy. Okay, so let's say the due date for us is September, or let's just pick a due date of December 1st. That's easy to remember. So, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So this would be, so the baby was conceived, let's say 9 months earlier, approximation, right, on March 1st. Okay, so March 1st. So she goes into 3 sections. So this is trimester number 1, trimester number 2, and trimester number 3, and then the birth process. And this is after post. So this is basically number 1, number 2, and number 3. And this is 9 months after the birth. What she talked about, and I don't know if I mentioned this last video after class number 1, but do you realize that because I always wondered, I'm like, why can't babies do anything when they're born? But then you see horses and deer and all these other human or other animals born, and they're like walking around, or elephants or stuff like this. If a baby was to mature at that stage of what like an elephant or a deer or other mammals, they would have to be in utero for 16 months. Okay, that's 5 more months longer. So let me explain to you what that means and what I connected with that, what that actually means. So if a deer is born down here, so this is actually month 18 after getting pregnant, right? So this is another 9 months. And this would be like a year after giving birth, and this is like 3 months or something. I don't know, something along those lines. Basically 52 something. I'm messing some of this stuff up, but it all makes sense. So if this is 9 months and the baby is at 15 months down here for full maturity of walking and stuff like that, like the other animals that are in the wild, that means the reason we're born at 9 months is because the head wouldn't fit through the hole that I can't remember the name of it right now, but like the hips, right? The head wouldn't fit through the hole in the hips, and so it actually we would not be able to birth babies. So we're born this early, which means the baby basically needs another 6 months to catch up to all of the other mammals in the world. And so it requires so much more care and concern, which is why I've heard this from other people. The first 6 weeks are the hardest. The baby is like acclimating to what's going on, and then the next 12 weeks afterwards are a little bit easier, right? So what's crazy is this period of time, super tired, right? Sleeping a lot here, sometimes sick. And then as it goes down, it's the same pattern on the way as the baby's born. And I was like, this is crazy. Crazy stuff here we're learning in a birth class. Now I'm a birth educator is what is happening right now. But the biggest takeaway that I learned was how we're so disconnected from our bodies. And it's not just, I hear Kate's mom talking about this a lot at her talks. And then right after, and Kate talks about this when it comes to money. And I've heard a lot of conversations around this as well. You have whole hay houses called You Can Heal Your Life. Our friend Dr. Kelly Turner wrote a book called Radical Remission. And what Radical Remission was about is that overcoming a holistic organic lifestyle and overcoming cancer, right? She's done all this research and all this stuff. So what I realized is that we are really super disconnected from our body. We want the doctors to fix it. And as I was talking about listening to Kate's mom's talk, a lot of times after she gets off stage and talks about all this stuff and you can overcome your sicknesses and diseases and all this stuff by believing in yourself and taking care of yourself and holistically healing yourself right off the bat. It's like, hey, what do I do with this? If I'm on this drug, what should I do? And it's so disconnected from ourselves. And we think so much in our neocortex. That's what I was talking about here. We're like living in this land, and we're so disconnected because every single person from when we were a child is telling us to not do this. You have to get the best grade on the test. If you get a C, you suck. Right? If you get a D or an F, you're horrible. You don't deserve to move on in the world. It's just so mind-blowing how disconnected we are, and especially us as guys. We feel we have to heal and connect and fix everything, but also it's a lot of stress on us to take care of all of that stuff. And it's like we're not touching base with what what we truly desire. We live a lot by society standards. We pay attention to too much marketing. We pay attention to what someone else says. And I know we give our power away to doctors, and I've done it. It's just like doctors will heal everything, or this drug company will take care of this, or this financial advisor will take care of this, or this person or this surgery can help me lose weight. But I have the surgery and nothing changes 6 months later. Why? Because we don't take control or personal responsibility for our own actions. And giving birth, I would say, is probably, after going through this, and I'm sure I'll see it, and I've heard many birth stories, is probably the most intense experience of being inside and in touch with yourself based off the descriptions from what I've seen. And it's not only healing for the woman, but it's also super, super healing for the man because they're in there to witness that. And I'm so grateful that I was able to take this course because of this information of what I was able to learn. And I think it's really, truly a healing process, but I also don't think we give it enough credit. Like, it's truly a spiritual practice. But what happens, as I talked about, the woman goes through the most intense part of her entire life right here, giving birth, and then breastfeeding, right? And all this oxytocin is happening, and you're super in love with the baby, and this is 6 weeks later, and 6 weeks later, what happens? In America, we send your ass back to work. Get back to work. After the most intense experience of her entire life, we go sit in a frickin' office to go type on a damn computer. Get back to work at the most spiritual, uplifting, and emotional time in a woman's life. Shit's messed up here. Mike Watts is out.